Hello, community. This episode contains sexual content and is not intended for any of my male family members, Christians, the elderly, or any other religious people. It is not intended for people who are not comfortable hearing about or viewing content of a sexual nature and people who are highly sensitive to language that may be viewed as obscene. Viewer discretion is advised. Welcome to Story Time, and thank you for joining. This episode is titled Everybody and They Mama Knew This Nigga Was Married Except for Me. I was 19 years old and it was New Year's Eve. I didn't have any plans, but I wanted to celebrate. I was single, so there was no man in my life to kiss me at midnight. My sister May asked me if I wanted to go to the club with her. I agreed. My sister Sherry joined us. Of course, I wasn't old enough to get into Stone Trail, but May got me in. The club was jumping. Black people all dressed up, looking good, and having a good time. This was my type of crowd. It was 1 a.m, and we were leaving. I was approached by a well-spoken, well-dressed, handsome black man. He was tall, debonair, charming, classy, had a nice smile. He was a lot older than I was, and he had a silver tongue. He asked me to dance. We did. He went to walk me out. But before we made it to the door, May and Sherry approached us. May said in a loud voice, "Tell him to buy us a drink." The man frowned a bit, and by the expression on his face, I could tell he wasn't impressed by May. We exchanged numbers, and as he opened the door to let me in the car, he went to kiss me. I avoided the kiss and told him we'd talk later. He worked in the hotel industry, and I worked at Luby's. After my shift was over one night, he asked me if he could pick me up. It was during that ride home he told me that he was married. I told him that I didn't date married men. His job took him out of town a lot. He eventually moved away, but every time he was in town, we would see each other. No sex or anything like that. We just enjoyed being around one another. We saw each other consistently for a few years, but we eventually lost contact. About 10 years had passed, and by this time, I was heavily involved in the church. We were having a musical at the church, but I promised my best friend Monica that I would go to the club with her after the event. It had been a long day, and I just wanted to go home. I was just about to text her to tell her that I couldn't make it, but right before I could hit the send button, she sent a message to me saying that she was looking forward to hanging out with me. Due to our work schedules and busy lives, we hadn't seen each other in months. After receiving her message, I couldn't cancel. I decided to leave the club early. Monica and I said our goodbyes. It rained there, and there were puddles everywhere. On top of it being wet, The club was doing construction in the parking lot. The moment that you walked into the room, I knew that fairy tales to really. I had on heels and was trying to avoid falling down. So my head was down, paying close attention to where I was stepping. I heard a man say, "Can I offer you my jacket to cover that puddle?" I said, "No, I'm good." I didn't want to be bothered. I just wanted to go home. The man got closer. Now I had a better look at him. It was my old friend Charles. We embraced. He hugged me so tight, it felt like my back was going to break. I was so happy to see him. I tried to conceal that. But he knew I was happy to see him, and he was happy to see me. I know because he kept saying so. By now I had my own place, was recently out of a relationship, and I had an 8-year-old son. The entire week we talked, we texted, we emailed, just like we were teenagers. Our communications were so passionate. A little time had passed, and by now I felt comfortable enough to invite him over to my home. We were having a good time with each other. It felt so good being with him, even though I was reluctant to ask if he were still married. But I couldn't go another minute without asking him what I had dread to ask. I needed to know, and I needed to know now. I told him that I dated a married man once, and I didn't want to date a married man again. So I asked if he was still married. He told me that he wasn't, but that he and his ex-wife had a very good co-parenting relationship. He hesitated. I could tell that what he was about to say was heavy. He said that we could never go to his place because he and his ex-wife vowed that they would never bring anyone that they were dating around the kids. He said that they came and went to each other's houses anytime they wanted. And while this arrangement was not ideal, it had worked for them for years, and people that they dated understood. I asked him in a very serious tone, looking him square in his eyes, "Are you telling me the truth?" He looked me dead in my eyes and responded, "Yes." I believed him. This was my friend. Why would he lie about this just to get some pussy? I mean, he had class. Only classless niggas would lie about something like this. He had everything going for himself. He was a corporate brother. He could have any woman he wanted. He was what Kevin Samuels would call a high-value man. Why would he lie just to be with me? I told him, if you're lying to me, it's going to be bad for you. Real bad. The room was silent for what felt like an eternity. Both of us staring into the room as if it was going to give its own opinion on the matter. My job had to notify customers by hand-delivered letter regarding a change in their service. As a result, it was my job to notify the customers in an assigned area of this change. I was given 5 temporary staff to help me with this task. I couldn't read maps, so they assigned a woman to work with me that was skilled in reading maps. Her name was Red. We instantly connected. She was high yellow, had a contagious laugh. She laughed from her gut. She was outspoken. She cursed so much it would make a sailor blush, and she wasn't ashamed about it. She was into riding horses, riding motorcycles, and riding men. She was a woman, but she was into things that a lot of women wouldn't be interested in. She started talking about the motorcycle club that she was a member of. I said, "My friend is a member of a motorcycle club." She said, "What's his name?" I hesitated. I said, "No," with a big smile on my face. "I'm not going to tell you his name because I know you're going to tell me something I don't want to hear." She said, "What's his name?" I paused and said, "Charles." She searched her brain and said, "I don't know him, but hold on." She called another member of the club and put him on speakerphone. She said, "Hey, D, do you know a Charles?" He sounded like a female gossiping to a friend. He sounded excited, as if he couldn't wait to spill the tea. He said, "Yeah, him and his wife just hosted our last event. You know Charles, the one with the silver tongue." She looked at me and I was sick. I literally wanted to throw up. I was nauseous and just wanted to get out of there. Charles and I had recently become friends on this new social networking site called Facebook. Up until now, I hadn't poked around much on his page. I had only checked his relationship status, which listed nothing. I immediately went looking through posts, pictures, to see if I saw any signs of him having a wife. There was nothing. However, a lady with his last name was one of his Facebook friends. I made sure to take note of her name. One time, he accidentally left his wallet at my place. I went through it. There were pictures of his children, but nothing with a wife. He never wore a wedding ring, stayed out all night, and was with me almost every Saturday. I thought to myself, why would a wife allow her husband to stay out to 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning and be gone every Saturday? Shit, I started to get mad at her ass because I figured if she hadn't allowed him to be married and be out in these streets like he was single, I wouldn't have gotten caught up in all this mess. I got dead in his ass. I wanted to know why. Why couldn't he just be honest with me? Why did he take away my right to choose? Why? Karma kicking my ass. Not happy in my relationship at the time in my 20s, I had cheated with a married man. I ended that relationship because cheating and married men are not my thing. I mean, it's too many men running around here in these streets to be wasting my time on someone who is not available. He reached out and wanted to talk things over. Although I was hurt and disgusted, I agreed. He sat with his head down for a while I stared at him with intensity. He reached for my hand and held it so gently. He said, "I'm sorry. I knew had I told you the truth, you wouldn't have gone for it. So honestly, I was going to ride this ride as long as I could." I'm actually glad it came out. Now you know the truth, and I don't have to lie to you. My wife and I haven't had a marriage in years. I thought to myself, this was the first time he had ever referred to her as his wife. He had always referred to her as the kid's mom. He had never slipped up with me by calling his wife, by calling her his wife. Now everything was out in the open, and I had to deal with it. He said, you know I don't have a marriage because I'm always here with you. When I get off of work, where do I come? Here with you. This man had been to my family reunion, wasn't shy about taking pictures together, had been to my company holiday parties. I had been to his office a lot of times. We met at each other's offices often for lunch. One time when he came over, he brought a guy over with him whom he introduced as a cousin of his kid's mom. When I thought about it, everyone that he had taken me around were men, with the exception of his sister. We went to her place when she first moved to Texas from Chicago. How could all of these people allow this to go on? If the men in my family cheated, they knew not to bring their side pieces around the family. Otherwise, they would be chastised. He was pleading his case. He said, I go out of town with you. I spend every weekend with you. I stay overnight here with you. If I could change things, it would be you. He looked so pitiful sitting there. He looked at me with tears in his eyes and said, I'm sorry. We held each other while we both cried. He kissed me oh so gently. Before I knew it, he was inside of me, taking long strokes, the sounds of love making fill the air. He was being taken to ecstasy. I knew this because he was vocal. He wasn't shy about being vocal while making love. Being all loud and shit, slipping and sliding inside of me like he was on one of those slip and slide water toys. He was a freak. No crack or crevice was off limits. He had always been able to make me cream, and this time was no exception. I hadn't planned on this ever happening again, but oh well, fuck it. I wanted to remember this moment because deep down inside, I knew this feeling wouldn't last and that it was over. He left the next morning. We didn't discuss where we were going to go from here. I preferred it that way because I was too emotionally drained and didn't want to talk about it anymore. Over the next few weeks, he reached out constantly, texting, calling, emailing. I was still hurt and not letting him come over to see me. I needed time. Time to think, time to heal, time to be mad, time to cry, and time to move on. Everybody at my job knew what was going on with me, which was fucked up because I'm a private person. I lost so much weight during all of this, people started saying I was on crack, asking me if I was okay. I wasn't on no damn crack. I don't smoke and I rarely drink. I had to direct my energy to something. So one day, I woke up and just started running. Red asked me how was everything going, And before I could respond, her phone rung. It was D, the guy that revealed that Charles was married. He said, I saw your homegirl and Charles at the field meet last night. The club didn't know that D was the snitch that revealed that Charles was married. They were trying to find out who the snitch was. They were out for blood. Members, especially the men, knew not to be discussing another man's sexual misdeeds. Red said, You saw my friend. She looked at me as if to say, You didn't tell me you went to the field meet. I was trying to control the expression on my face, 'cause I knew I didn't go to a field meet. And D didn't say he saw Charles and his wife at the field meet. He said he saw Charles and your friend at the field meet. He said, Oh, she got a big old booty. Pretty girl, dark-skinned chick. Red said, Yeah, my friend got a big old butt, but she ain't dark-skinned, while looking at me. At this point, I was floored. This nigga done got a whole wife at home, me on the side, and now this woman. I was fuming. I wanted blood. I wanted him to be as embarrassed as I was. I texted him. I said that I was going to send a copy of our sex tape to his wife via Facebook Messenger. I said that I was going to put his naked ass pictures all over his neighbor's doors. He was a freak. So that sex tape had a bunch of freaky shit he was doing to me. He had always responded to me promptly, but this time he was quiet as a church mouse. I wanted answers, so I decided to call him. He picked up. I could hear the anxiety in his voice. Hello, he said. Did you get my text message? No, I didn't get a message. Well, when you get it, you need to read it. By now, I was at my friend Jarvis's house that lived near my job. And I didn't want him to hear what was going on. So rather than say what was on my mind, I told that nigga to read the text. He responded a long time later, stating that telling his wife would be a big mistake. I responded, Nigga, you threatening me? He said he had a whole arsenal of shit he was going to release on me. I wasn't scared. I figured, well, nigga, let's rumble in the jungle. By now, my friend Jarvis knew that something intense was going on, so he asked me, what's going on? Jarvis was like a brother to me. I met him while working as a clerk at a school. He was a school teacher. We had been friends now for over a decade. I couldn't even muster up the strength to tell him what was going on. So I just handed him the phone so he could read the text messages on his own. He said, Frat married? Obviously, our text messages back and forth were rather amusing to him because he couldn't stop laughing. He was oblivious to the fact that I was clearly hurting. I felt defeated. How could I have fallen for this for so many years? I trusted this man. I loved this man. I believed what he told me. I'm a private person, but I was so upset, I was talking to anyone that would listen. I told my neighbor April what was going on. She had a strange look on her face. I said, what is it? She said, I met him and his wife at a party Marcus threw. And his wife was my fiance's nurse when he was hospitalized. Our neighbor Marcus used to always throw parties that several of our neighbors would go to. An introvert that didn't want to go to Marcus's parties anyway, I never questioned why he never invited me to any of his parties, even though we were cool. Marcus and Charles were friends. I knew this. They had been friends a very long time. April could see the look on my face. She said, "You didn't even know, did you?" In a wimpy, soft voice, I said no. So now people on my job knew, my neighbors have always known, and a few of my friends knew. I've always had friends that were much older than I was. When I told my friend Perla what I was going to tell his wife, she said, "Treese, that woman ain't done nothing to you. Telling her won't accomplish anything. She probably already know." Jarvis realized how nasty this situation was getting. He said, "Sis, I know you hurting, but leave that shit alone." As time passed, the wounds began to heal. And Charles started sending me my yearly birthday wishes. We saw each other occasionally throughout the years just to catch up. He always kept in touch with me, but once I found out he was married, I vowed that he would never be in my bed or my body again. A decade had passed. It was New Year's Eve 2024. By now, we've known each other close to 30 years. I got the WYD text. I told Charles that I had plans. He said that he did too. He sent a picture of himself wishing me a happy new year. Boy, did he look different, which was expected. 30 years had passed. I started getting daily texts from him. He wanted to see me. I had spent New Year's Eve with a friend drinking and staying up late. I really wasn't in the mood to be seeing anybody, but I agreed to see him. I was single again and had started back going on dates, but I needed to rest up before I saw him. He came over, and it was just like old times. We joked, we laughed, and cracked on each other. While talking, he kept referring to his wife as his ex. I didn't ask any questions, as I really didn't care. Out of nowhere, he asked me if I was still into older men. Charles was 15 years older than I was. I told him that now that I was older, I didn't want nothing old but money. And I started to laugh. He didn't see anything funny about that. Okay, community. I know this has been a very long episode, but you want to stick around to the end. He looked into my eyes with those big old eyes of his, with a serious look on his face. I stopped laughing and said, "What's wrong with you?" He didn't respond, so I left it alone. He didn't make any moves on me. He didn't even try to kiss me. He was the perfect gentleman. But as he was leaving and hugging me goodbye, he said something of a sexual nature. I couldn't make out what he said. And I didn't ask him to repeat himself. I received another text from him a day or two later. I brought to his attention that he sure was texting me a lot. He wanted to see me again. He wanted to take me to dinner. I didn't want to go out, so I suggested that we order in. We settled on Tex-Mex. Back in the day, I always cooked for him. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed cooking for him and just hanging around the house watching movies. Today, they call that Netflix and chill. He convinced me to go with him to pick up our food. As we were in the car was quiet. I said, "Turn on the music. You know we don't have nothing to talk about." He said, "One day I'ma just record your ass talking. You say anything." I laughed and said, "You know I have a sarcastic sense of humor." We made it back to my place. He revealed that his sister had passed of a heart condition that several of their family members had succumbed to. As he told his story, he kept referring to his wife as his ex, as if he wanted to make sure that I knew this. I still didn't ask any questions, and since I didn't, he finally revealed that they had divorced. I thought to myself, this explains the increasing communication. That ink probably wasn't dry on the divorce papers before he was contacting me and God knows who else. Why is it that men just can't be alone after a breakup? He left. Still nothing. In the past, he had always managed to grab my booty or slap me on my ass, as if to remember what once was. A few days had passed. He wanted to see me. Having the company of an old friend was good, but I didn't want to make this a weekly thing. Old girl needed to be dusted off, but I was reluctant to go there with him. I mean, we had history, but this was in the past. I'm a grown woman now. My likes are different. My wants are different. What I'm attracted to is different. I really wasn't into old dudes like that anymore. I was kind with him, stroking his ego as women are taught to do, reassuring him that it wasn't his age that was keeping me from going there with him. By now he was more comfortable coming here. I could tell because now he would take off his shoes, his pants, whereas he didn't do that the first couple of times he came over. I guess then he was testing the waters. I enjoyed his company, but I had reservations about us having sex. I wanted to remember what was, the connection we once had. I rarely experienced that feeling, and I wanted to hold on to that memory. He kept talking about sex, and although I had my reservations, by now I was considering it. I mean, old girl did need to be dusted off. And if his dick game wasn't all that, his oral used to be. I asked him if his dick still got hard. I'm in my 40s now, and I ain't got time to be wasting time with no limp ass dick. He kind of rocked his head back and forth. He didn't seem too confident to me, but said, he gets hard, as if to convince himself and me. So I said, fuck it, and I folded. We had sex, and it was a big difference. One, I was no longer connected to him in a way that I once was. And two, it was okay, but it wasn't great. Shit, I had to take out my vibrator once he left up out of here. Old girl didn't even cream like she used to for him. Hell, I started wondering if I was going through menopause. This is exactly why I didn't want to go there. This is what I was afraid of. I wanted to remember how it was in his heyday. Now those blissful memories would be overshadowed by our most recent encounter. He left. I lied in bed thinking about what went down. Sex was different now. The way I felt about him was different now. But maybe with time, the feelings would come back. I wasn't dating anyone seriously, but that's what I was working towards. I wasn't interested in having casual sex with anyone. He reached out, wanting to come over again. By now, I was slow to respond to messages and was putting off dates to see him. And he was getting upset. I thought maybe the feelings would come back. It had been a long time since we'd been together. Maybe I just needed time. If I was going to entertain the idea of us having sex regularly, I needed to know his relationship status. He said he was divorced, but hell, he has always had a woman or women as long as he has been married. I texted him. I asked if he was in a relationship, a situationship, or entanglement. He responded that he was divorced, not married. He was avoiding my question. I knew he couldn't be alone, but I wanted to hear him say it. For once, I just wanted him to tell the truth. It's not hard. He wouldn't respond to my question. He had already told me everything I needed to know. I wished him well. He got mad. I told him if he couldn't come to me correct, don't come at all. I wasn't upset about it because I knew that our ship had sailed a long time ago. As for Charles, he's probably somewhere hopping in and out of senior citizens' beds. And as for old girl, she wasn't going through menopause because she creamed real good for another man. And as for that sex tape, look for it soon on Tubi. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.